Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Wednesday, August 27, 2025. A gunman kills 2 children and injures 17 other children and adults at a Catholic school in Minneapolis during a mass celebrating the first day of school before killing himself. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey saying, "You cannot put into words the gravity, tragedy, or absolute pain of this moment." FBI Director Kash Patel says it's being investigated as an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime against Catholics. Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser says the 3 weeks after President Donald Trump sent federal law enforcement officers to help fight crime in D.C., the crime rate has fallen. She says that shows what could be done if D.C. were able to hire additional police. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says his department will take over management of Union Station in Washington from Amtrak as part of the president's moves to reduce crime and homelessness in the city. Duffy says Union Station has fallen into disrepair and it should be a point of pride for Washington. AFL-CIO President Liz Shuler, in a pre-Labor Day State of the Union's address, criticizes President Trump's policies, saying this is the choice working Americans have been given: chaos or the same broken status quo. Plus, the FDA approves COVID-19 vaccines with more restrictions, and the United Nations Security Council holds a meeting on the war in Gaza. KMSP-TV in Minneapolis, Fox affiliate, reporting that 2 children were killed and 17 other people were injured in a shooting at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis on Wednesday morning. The gunman, who fired from outside through the church windows as the children worshipped, killed himself. An 8-year-old child and 10-year-old child were killed in the shooting. Adults and children, including a child as young as 6, were among those injured. That was from KMSP-TV. The Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara spoke at a news conference soon after the shooting.
During the Mass, a gunman approached on the outside on the side of the building and began firing a rifle through the church windows towards the children sitting in the pews at the Mass. Shooting through the windows, he struck children and worshipers that were inside the building. The shooter was armed with a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. This was a deliberate act of violence against innocent children and other people worshiping. The sheer cruelty and cowardice of firing into a church full of children is absolutely incomprehensible. Police officers from the Minneapolis Police Department immediately responded, entered the church, and attempted to provide first aid and rescue some of the children that were hiding throughout the building, while other first responders came and EMS responded to rush victims to nearby hospitals. 2 young children, ages 8 and 10, were killed where they sat in the pews. Their parents have been notified. 17 other people were injured, 14 of them being children. 2 of those children are in critical condition. The coward who fired these shots ultimately took his own life in the rear of the church. Our hearts are broken for the families who have lost their children, for these young lives that are now fighting to recover, and for our entire community that has been so deeply traumatized by this senseless attack. We will stand together to protect our children, our schools, and our houses of worship. This deliberate act of violence is just a sign of cruelty that is beyond comprehension.
Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara at a news conference in that city soon after the shooting, and authorities later said that all those injured in the shooting are expected to survive. President Donald Trump writing on Truth Social, "I have been fully briefed on the tragic shooting in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The FBI quickly responded, and they are on the scene. The White House will continue to monitor this terrible situation. Please join me in praying for everyone involved." The president also signed a proclamation ordering flags flown at half-staff, quote, as a mark of respect for the victims of the senseless acts of violence. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Democrat, posting, Minnesota is heartbroken from the officers responding to the clergy and teachers providing comfort to the hospital staff, saving lives. We will get through this together. Hug your kids close. And Governor Walz spoke at a news conference later in the afternoon.
Certainly a day and a news conference that no one wants to be at. A community behind us, Annunciation Church and School, committed to academics, service, and Catholic values, filled with the first days of school of beautiful children going to learn those values, share with their teachers and their classmates. And instead of that joy and that curiosity and that learning, they were met with evil and horror and death. And we often come to these and say, these unspeakable tragedies, or there's no words for this. There shouldn't be words for these types of incidents because they should not happen. And there's no words that are going to ease the pain of the families today. On behalf of all the people of Minnesota, our deepest sympathies. A wish that any of these words would make what you're feeling now better, but it won't. A place that's founded on community, founded on service, founded on family. I'd like to give special thank you to the mayor and the team in Minneapolis, the Minneapolis Police Department, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, Minnesota State Patrol, the BCA, so many agencies, our federal partners in the FBI, the first responders, and the heroic work that's happening now as we speak at multiple medical locations, including Hennepin County Medical Center, where most of our children were transported to receive the life-saving care. The thoughts and prayers and the hopes and the support that we need to give them in this moment, too, is critical. Speaking with all the people here and grateful to our federal partners, Senator Klobuchar speaking early this morning and receiving a call from President Trump, who was with his leadership team of the Attorney General and the Vice President, expressing their deep condolences amongst the horror that happened and an offer to provide the support to the folks here in Minnesota of what's needed. So there's a lot of cameras here, and unfortunately we have been through these types of things. They will be gone at some point. All of you have to do your jobs. But what happened here today will not be gone. Minnesotans will not step away. We'll stand with this community. We'll redouble ourselves to do the best we can to understand what we can do to prevent any parent from having to receive the calls they received today, from any school dedicated to children having to respond to a situation that, as we said, is unthinkable, but that's all too common, not just in Minnesota, but across this country.
Governor Tim Walz, Democrat of Minnesota, at a news conference in Minneapolis. Vatican News writes that Pope Leo XIV has expressed his profound sorrow upon learning of the loss of life and injuries following the shooting that took place at Annunciation Church in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the U.S. In a telegram sent to Archbishop Bernard Hebda of Minneapolis, the Pope expressed his heartfelt condolences and the assurance of spiritual closeness to all those affected by this terrible tragedy, especially the families now grieving the loss of a child. FBI Director Kash Patel, writing on X, updates on the shooting in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The FBI is investigating this shooting as an act of domestic terrorism and hate crime targeting Catholics. There were 2 fatalities, an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. In addition, 14 children and 3 adults were injured. The shooter has been identified as Robin Westman, a male born as Robert Westman. The FBI will continue to provide updates on our ongoing investigation with the public as we are able. That's the post from FBI Director Kash Patel. And then the Homeland Security Secretary Christine Noem wrote on X, we have confirmation the shooter at Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis, Minnesota was a 22-year-old man claiming to be transgender. This deranged monster targeted our most vulnerable, young children praying in their first morning mass of the school year. This deeply sick murderer scrawled the words, "For the children and where is your God?" and "Kill Donald Trump" on a Rifle magazine. This level of violence is unthinkable. Our deepest prayers are with the children, parents, families, educators, and Christians everywhere. We mourn with them, we pray for healing, and we will never forget them. That was from Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem on X. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, a Democrat, spoke to this part of the story at the news conference with the governor.
I have heard about a whole lot of hate that's being directed at our trans community. Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity. We should not be operating out of a place of hate for anyone. We should be operating from a place of love for our kids. Kids died today. This needs to be about them. This needs to be wrapping our arms around these families with every bit of love that we can possibly show. And I know that our Minneapolis family and well beyond is prepared to do exactly that. And so my message to everyone out there is, again, these families are experiencing some acute pain right now. But don't just think of these as somebody else's kids. Think of your own. Let's make sure that we're acting now to not just say it's never happening again, but ensure it doesn't.
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, Democrat, at a news conference today in his city. More reaction to the shooting. The U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, writing on X, "I'm horrified by the shooting at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis and closely monitoring the situation. I'm thankful for the first responders on the scene. Students and teachers should not be putting their lives on the line just by going back to school. We must do more to stop gun violence in America." And from the U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, this post: "We are heartbroken over the tragic violence that has occurred at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis, and we send our gratitude to law enforcement and the first responders who are on the scene. Our prayers are with the children, families, civilians, law enforcement, and all those impacted by this evil attack." The Democratic National Committee has been holding its summer meeting this week in Minneapolis, and today was to be the final session. It adjourned early because of the shooting. The DNC chair, Ken Martin, made some remarks.
By now, many of you have heard the news that there was a shooting this morning that took place at Annunciation Church and Catholic School in South Minneapolis, no more than 10 minutes from where we are now. At this moment, we are praying for the families, the students, and the teachers at Annunciation. We are praying. What we know is that emergency responders are on the scene, and while we wait for more details about what happened this morning, we are sending our support to all the first responders, law enforcement officers, hospital and medical workers, and everybody who is supporting the response. This is the first week of school for students at Annunciation. These families woke up this morning to celebrate milestones in their children's lives. Milestones like the first week of kindergarten. We are heartbroken. This is a tragic day for our city and a tragic day for Minnesotans. On the heels of a tragic year where we already lost our dear friends, Melissa and Mark Ortman, and it's unacceptable. It's far too commonplace in our nation. It's just far too commonplace. Folks, we need your prayers, we need your faith, and we need leadership to stop this evil.
Democratic National Committee Chair Ken Martin at the DNC meeting in Minneapolis, and due to the shooting, today's business was done very quickly and the meeting was adjourned. It's a story from NBC News. Today's tragedy marked the 5th school shooting of 2025, according to a school shooting tracker by NBC News. The other shootings occurred at Spartan College of Aeronautics and Technology in Inglewood, California on May 2nd, Florida State University in Tallahassee on April 17th, Pasadena Memorial High School in Texas on February 1st, and Antioch High School in Nashville, Tennessee on January 22nd. This is Washington Today. WUSA TV, Channel 9 in Washington, writes that Wednesday marked a shift for Mayor Muriel Bowser as the President Donald Trump's ordered federal surge stretched into its third week. The takeaway for the mayor, the Metropolitan Police Department needs 500 more officers to continue to maintain the lower crime numbers reportedly brought on by the surge, with the mayor giving federal authorities credit for a significant decrease in D.C. crime. That was from the article at WUSA TV. Here is the mayor at today's news conference.
We need at least 500 new officers, to hire 500 new officers over the course of the next several years, to have the number of officers that we need and to decrease the amount of overtime that we use. And so I want to move on to share with you, and I know that there have been data shared throughout this period, and this is a chart. It shows, and this is the type of categories that the chief reports to me on a weekly basis about what's happening in crime in the district. We've highlighted the area in yellow that shows the impact of the surge of FBI, DEA, ATF, and Park and Capitol Police and other federal agencies in the district. And the federal surge has had a significant increase on crime in Washington, D.C. And we greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do in this city. The most significant thing that we are highlighting today is the area of crime that was most troubling for us in 2023. Now, we have driven it down over the last years, but I'm going to get my glasses so I can make sure I can see it correctly. But for carjackings, the difference between this period, this 20-day period of this federal surge and last year represents a 87% reduction in carjackings in Washington, D.C. We know that when carjackings go down, when the use of gun goes down, when homicide or robbery go down, neighborhoods feel safer and are safer. So this surge has been important to us for that reason.
Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, Democrat, at a news conference today. Her slide presentation also had one slide that said what's not working, and the three things listed: must build more trust between federal partners and community, masked ICE agents, and National Guard from other states. The D.C. Police Chief Pamela Smith was also at today's news conference. A reporter asked her about city residents' reaction to the surge of federal officers and National Guard on the streets.
This is Campbell Robertson with the New York Times. Chief Smith, and y'all kind of answered this a few minutes ago, that the operations that are unfolding are very much what y'all would be doing if there were 500 MPD officers. But given, you hear a lot of folks in some of these neighborhoods who feel a lot of stops and searches, what's in your pocket, all this kind of stuff, and these are strangers, they don't recognize them, they're not local police. Your initial concerns about trust, do you feel that the way these operations are being done are exactly what MPD has been advising the federal partners to do, or do you concern that it's a little bit too aggressive and you have worries of what effect it might have on communal trust going forward?
And I think anytime you have an influx of anything, there is some concern, and especially in this case where we've built relationships with our community and now we have additional law enforcement officers present, which is why it's really key and important for me to make sure we have the Metropolitan Police Department officers aligned with our federal partners. Some of the things that you're seeing is some of the ask and requests from community. Community wanted to see more traffic stops. They would like to see more police officers present in various communities. And so what we've done has been very strategic and thoughtful about taking into account some of the requests and also making sure that in areas, I'll just use for an example like the traffic safety compliance checkpoints, right? I've heard since I've been here over and over again that officers are not conducting traffic stops. And so we initiated the traffic traffic safety compliance checkpoint in order to ensure that we can educate folks about traffic and traffic safety. Number one, opportunities for us to ensure that we are getting guns off of our street if guns are present. And then number two, making sure that our operators are operating the way they should based on vehicle traffic laws. And so I don't think we're doing anything any different in that space, with the exception of the fact that we have an additional surge, if you will, of police officers, and we'll continue to do that. If they're here, we will utilize our federal partners in spaces and places where we have heard from our community, and when we've looked at our own data and analysis in areas across the city where we know that we've had a certain spike in crime, and we'd like to see that reduced. And what you've seen over the last 2 weeks is the efforts with having an additional 500 or so officers supporting us in that area.
Washington, D.C. Police Chief Pamela Smith at today's news conference with the Mayor Muriel Bowser. What the mayor called a situational update 3 weeks since President Trump's actions concerning the D.C. Police and National Guard. Associated Press writes that as armed National Guard troops patrol the nation's capital as part of an unprecedented federal takeover of Washington's police department, handling crime is now a relative strength for President Donald Trump, according to the latest AP NORC poll. About half the U.S. adults, 53%, say they approve of Trump's handling of crime. The poll finds that's higher than his approval rating on the economy, immigration, and the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, which are in line with his overall approval rating. That was from AP. And from Reuters, the Transportation Department plans to reclaim management of Washington Union Station, one of the country's biggest rail hubs. President Donald Trump's latest move to give the federal government more of a role running what he portrays as a rundown capital city. The plan to reclaim Union Station follows Trump's move this month to deploy hundreds of National Guard troops to Washington after he took control of the local police department over the objections of local leaders. That's how Reuters put that. Here's the Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy making the announcement today at Union Station.
If you've heard the president and you follow D.C. news, the president has been very concerned about crime in our nation's capital. He wants a capital that is worthy of the greatest country that's ever existed on the face of the earth, which means a capital that's clean, a capital that's safe, and a capital that doesn't have its parks overtaken by homelessness. And so we look at our equities. We're going to partner and invest in the streets of this city. But today we are going to look at Union Station. And Union Station is frankly owned by DOT. We are going to take DOT from our partners back under DOT control, and we are going to make the investments to make sure that this station isn't dirty, that we don't have homelessness in Union Station. We want a place where businesses want to obtain leases and set up shop and serve the community of DC, but also the people that travel into DC via train. But also, we want if you're out, you want to go for a great meal, you want to go shopping, you want to come to Union Station because it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, it's safe, it's a great experience. That's what we want to do for Union Station. So today we're announcing that we're going to take Union Station back under DOT control. Not a power play, we've always had it, but we think that we can manage the property better, bring in more tenants, bring in more revenue, and that revenue is going to allow us to make investments in this beautiful building. It needs investments. It's been, I think, neglected for decades, and it's showing its age. And again, we want to make this place beautiful, and the premier train station, not just in America, but the premier train station in the world. And that takes money. And again, it's this reform that's going to help us make that happen.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy at a news conference today at Union Station in Washington, D.C. He was also there to announce the launch of Next Gen Acela, which Amtrak is calling a high-speed train capable of 160 miles per hour. The Secretary and others took the inaugural trip today between D.C. and New York City's Penn Station. More about the announcement, though, on Union Station from the Reuters article. The majestic Beaux Arts-style station, which opened in 1907, is owned by the federal government, but has been run by a nonprofit corporation working with Amtrak. The station has billions of dollars of spending pending in long-delayed maintenance, track, parking, and other needs. It also has faced homeless and crime issues, including a murder in February in a Union Station parking garage. National Guard troops have guarded sites in Washington since mid-August, including Union Station, and Vice President J.D. Vance visited soldiers at the station last week. Deputy Transportation Secretary Steve Bradbury said a $10 billion planned redevelopment of Union Station announced during the Biden administration would be scrapped, and a new plan will be adopted. Some of the reporting from Reuters. This is Washington Today. A top White House official, begins the Washington Times article, said Wednesday that mortgage fraud accusations against Fed Governor Lisa Cook are serious, and she should vacate her position instead of waiting for a court decision on President Trump's attempt to fire her. Kevin Hassett, the director of the White House National Economic Council, said Mr. Trump absolutely has the authority to fire a Fed governor, as Ms. Cook pledges to file suit against the president. Mr. Trump moved to fire Ms. Cook late Monday, saying he could no longer trust her with monetary policy amid claims she cited separate properties in 2021 as her primary residences. That was from the Washington Times. Kevin Hassett spoke to reporters outside the White House.
About Lisa Cook and the firing that President Trump is aiming to take. Do you think that he has the authority to do that? And is this an effort to ultimately lower interest rates?
The president absolutely has authority to fire a Fed governor for cause. And I think the accusations are serious. And I look forward to seeing the outcome of the dispute. I think that, if it were me and I had made the mistakes on the mortgage forms that are accused, and I would either deny it because it was not true, or I would go on leave until people resolve the matter. And the fact that she's not doing that now suggests that she's being partisan. She's trying to make a partisan stance, which is contrary to the independence of the Fed, really.
Do you believe that she should be presumed innocent, considering she hasn't been found guilty, or do you think she should just take leave?
If I were her in her circumstance, I would take leave right now. I think it's the honorable thing to do.
And who do you think should replace her?
That's something that'll be up to the president.
So you're saying, Kevin, there's nothing in your past, either when you were in the administrations or out of the administrations, that won't come back to bite you one day when you're serving on the reserve?
I've been through Senate confirmation. I've been through security clearances, and so yes, that's what I'm saying.
Kevin, just backing up, is there an actual investigation into this book, or is this just going off of news reports? You said these allegations.
My understanding is that it's been handed off to the Justice Department for investigation. My understanding is it's been handed off to the Justice Department for investigation.
Kevin Hassett, director of the National Economic Council at the White House, speaking to reporters outside the White House. More from the Washington Times article. Lisa Cook is the first black woman to sit on the Fed's Board of Governors. President Biden nominated her to the board in 2022. Her removal and replacement, alongside confirmation of a pending governor nominee, would give the White House a Trump-appointed majority on the Fed board as the White House seeks lower interest rates from central bankers. Again, from the Washington Times article. New York Federal Reserve President John Williams was asked about this case today in a CNBC interview.
Let me begin with the news of the day, which is that the president, for the first time in history, has fired a governor of the Federal Reserve Board for cause. I want to have your reaction to the president's actions and your reaction to the allegations against Fed Governor Lisa Cook.
Well, I don't have anything to add or say around and the allegations. Obviously, that's a legal process. I'll let others speak to that. Personally, I have worked with Lisa Cook as she's been a member of the Board of Governors, and she's always brought, integrity and a commitment to the Federal Reserve's mission. She's a very esteemed and highly respected economist. But I think the broader picture, obviously, is that, I think Federal Reserve central bank independence is very much very important. It's important not because it's convenient or anything like that, but because we know from history, from experience, that independent central banks can deliver low inflation, economic and financial stability, and we know the structure of the Federal Reserve is such that it's designed to have independent policymakers who are making decisions that affect the economy over the longer term, away from short-term political pressure, and I think that's really, really important.
But if the president can fire somebody based upon allegations, does that threaten the Fed's independence?
Well, again, I'm going to just speak to the importance of the independence, and something that, I think is proven to be valuable around the world. We see countries throughout all the continents really have turned to having independent central banks like we do, so that you can get the best outcomes for the people of the country, and in our case, for the United States, and quite honestly, for the world. The Federal Reserve is obviously very central to the health of the U.S. economy and the global economy.
New York Federal Reserve President John Williams on CNBC. Wall Street today, the Dow up 147, NASDAQ up 45, S&P up 15. BBC News writes U.S. tariffs of 50% on goods from India took effect on Wednesday as Donald Trump sought to punish Delhi for buying Russian oil and weapons. The tariffs, among the highest in the world, include a 25% penalty for transactions with Russia that are a key source of funds for its war in Ukraine. India, a vital strategic U.S. partner in the Indo-Pacific, has shown no signs of stopping its purchases, calling the tariffs unfair and vowing to choose the best deal on buying oil to protect its 1.4 billion people. That was from BBC News. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Get C-SPAN wherever you are with C-SPAN Now, our free mobile video app that puts you at the center of democracy, live and on demand. Keep up with the day's biggest events with live streams of floor proceedings and hearings from the U.S. Congress, White House events, the courts, campaigns, and more from the world of politics, all at your fingertips. Catch the latest episodes of Washington Journal. Find scheduling information for C-SPAN's TV and radio networks, plus a variety of compelling podcasts. The C-SPAN Now app is available at the Apple Store and Google Play. Download it for free today. C-SPAN, Democracy Unfiltered.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you find your podcasts. AP writes that U.S. regulators approved updated COVID-19 shots Wednesday, but limited their use for many Americans and removed one of the 2 vaccines available for young children. The new shots from Pfizer, Moderna, and Novavax are approved for all seniors, but the Food and Drug Administration narrowed their use for younger adults and children to those with at least one high-risk health condition, such as asthma or obesity. That presents new barriers to access for millions of Americans who would have to prove their risk, and millions more who may want to get vaccinated and suddenly no longer qualify. Additionally, Pfizer's vaccine will no longer be available for any child under 5 because the FDA said it was revoking the shot's emergency authorization for that age group. That was from Associated Press. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., writing on X, I promised 4 things. 1, to end COVID vaccine mandates. 2, to keep vaccines available to people who want them, especially the vulnerable. 3, to demand placebo-controlled trials from companies. And 4, to end the emergency. In a series of FDA actions today, we accomplished all 4 goals. He also wrote, the American people demanded science, safety, and common sense. The framework delivers all 3. Secretary Kennedy was asked about a related COVID issue while at a news conference in Austin, Texas, where he was attending the signing of Make America Healthy Again, or MAHA legislation, with Governor Greg Abbott.
The House, a lot of them behind you, just passed a bill to legalize over-the-counter ivermectin here in the state. What are your thoughts on that bill, and do you see yourself trying to push for that on a federal level?
I think it's a really good bill. I think Americans should have the choice. One of the things, one of the policies of the federal government after President Trump left office, because as you remember, President Trump was in favor of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. After he left office, there was an effort to shut off any therapy that was not vaccine related, and to put people into this funnel, not allow choices. And in doing that, they got the state got between this sacred relationship between doctors and their patients that has been true since Hippocrates. The obligation of a doctor is to treat their patient. That's why we have confidentiality. You can say whatever you want to the doctor, and he's not allowed to tell anybody. And that is because that relationship is sacred. He's treating you. He's not treating all of society. Whenever we tell doctors that their job is to no longer treat that patient, but to treat all of society, that's when we get this kind of medical tyranny that is brutal and savage and merciless and lethal. And we need to return our medical profession to its obligation, not serving state interests or state agendas or political agendas, but to treating and healing their patients.
Amen. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at a news conference in Austin, Texas. New York Times reports that Susan Menares, who just weeks ago became director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, has abruptly left her job after a tumultuous month that included dramatic shifts in vaccine policy and layoffs of the agency's workforce. And the Health and Human Services Department X account writing that Susan Menares is no longer director of the CDC. We thank her for her dedicated service to the American people. Secretary Kennedy has full confidence in his team at CDC, who will continue to be vigilant in protecting Americans against infectious diseases at home and abroad. Secretary Kennedy was in Austin, Texas, attending the signing of a MAHA bill, that's Make America Healthy Again, with Governor Greg Abbott, a Republican. The bill mandates nutrition education across K through 12 schools, higher education, and healthcare settings, while requiring clear labeling on packaged foods containing ingredients banned in other countries. Here's Governor Abbott.
Making Texas healthy, it's not complicated. It's the usual stuff, eating right, exercising, doing the things that will help to prevent illness. Chronic diseases, such as obesity and diabetes, are due in part to ultra-processed foods, poor nutrition, and lack of exercise. Senate Bill 25 that I'm about to sign by Senator Kolkhorst and Representative Hull is known as the Make Texas Healthy Again Act. It promotes healthier living for all Texans by embedding nutrition education across K through 12 schools, higher education, as well as among healthcare professionals. To support informed consumer choice, Senate Bill 25 requires clear labeling on packaged food products that contain ingredients that are banned in many other countries. In addition to Senate Bill 25, I'm going to sign Senate Bill 314 by Senator Hughes and Representative Harris-Dabla. It prohibits schools that participate in the National School Lunch and Breakfast programs from serving foods with additives that are linked to disease, diabetes, and obesity. Then there's Senate Bill 379 by Senator Middleton and Representative Gerdes. It prohibits SNAP benefits from being used to buy sweetened drinks and candy. Taxpayer dollars should not be used to fund chronic health problems in our state. To be clear, these are bipartisan laws that I'm proud to sign into effect.
Governor Greg Abbott, Republican from Texas, today in Austin. Washington Examiner writes the Trump administration is angling to overhaul the medical education system by improving nutrition and healthy lifestyle education for physicians and other healthcare providers as part of the Make America Healthy Again agenda. Secretary Kennedy on Wednesday announced that his department, along with the Education Department, is requesting that medical education institutions require nutrition curricula at every stage in the process of becoming a physician. AFL-CIO President Liz Shuler gave her State of the Union's address today ahead of Labor Day. It was a virtual speech, and she criticized the Trump administration policies as anti-worker.
This is the choice working Americans have been given: chaos or the same broken status quo. An authoritarian who tells us only he can make things great again, or convincing ourselves everything is already great while black women make 64 cents on the dollar and young people struggle to pay rent, or a CEO makes 7,000 times what his workers make. That has led us to this moment. We wanted cheaper groceries, and we got tanks in our streets. We wanted affordable health care. We got 16 million Americans who are about to be kicked off their coverage. We wanted jobs you could raise a family on. But that's not what we got. We got more American workers laid off last month than any month since the start of the pandemic. The American people said loud and clear, unions are the one thing we agree on. Instead, this administration attacked us and the workers who keep this country going. Veterans like Shernice Mundell, who served this country in the Air Force, came home and kept serving in our government for years to make sure retired post office workers got their benefits, until an email came in one night in March at 11 p.m. telling her she was fired, along with thousands of others. Lumber mill workers like Luis Gomez Garcia in upstate New York, who did everything he was supposed to do, got a work permit, got a job supporting his family and his 2 young daughters, until immigration officers showed up at the mill and arrested him without cause and pulled his daughters out of school. Federal workers like Derek Copeland in Georgia at the Department of Agriculture, who made sure food was being imported into the country and was safe to eat, until one morning in February when he got a letter saying his employment wasn't in the public interest. This administration wants us to look at stories like these and say, oh, it's not my job, my livelihood. Maybe there'll be more for me if someone else loses. They want to convince working people that we are each other's enemies, that we need to fight one another to land a good job, to find a home in a safe neighborhood, that only so many of us can live with dignity at the same time. We are not each other's enemies. We are each other's neighbors, friends, coworkers. We are each other's brothers, sisters, and family. Whether we work for the public sector or the private sector, whether we are immigrants or fourth generation, whether we are gay, straight, trans, black, white, blue state, red state, we are all suffering under the same broken system. It doesn't have to be this way. Things can be different if we build real sustained power that shows up every day, not just once every 4 years.
Liz Shuler is president of the AFL-CIO. That was part of her State of the Union's address ahead of Labor Day online, and you can find the video at cspan.org. Time magazine writes that protesters across America are planning to take a stand against Trump administration on Labor Day, with an emphasis on supporting the workers of the nation and resisting the billionaire takeover. In what has become somewhat of a trend on U.S. public holidays this year, thousands of protesters attended demonstrations on Independence Day. Activists are set to take to the streets in their respective cities. That was from Time magazine. This is Washington Today. All United Nations Security Council members except the United States on Wednesday said the famine in Gaza was a man-made crisis and warned that the use of starvation as a weapon of war is banned under international humanitarian law. That begins a Reuters article. It goes on in a joint statement. The 14 council members called for an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire, the release of all hostages held by Hamas and other groups, a substantive surge of aid throughout Gaza, and for Israel to immediately and unconditionally lift all restrictions on aid delivery. Again, reporting from Reuters. Ahead of the Security Council meeting at the UN in New York City, Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, spoke with reporters in the hallway. He answered questions about the Israeli military strike in Gaza a few days ago that killed several journalists and Israel's plans for Gaza City.
Michelle Nichols from Reuters. Thank you, Alana, for sharing your story with us. Ambassador, I wanted to ask you about the strike on Monday that killed several journalists at Nasser Hospital. The Israeli military said that Reuters and AP journalists weren't the intended target, but Reuters is regularly broadcast from there. So what went wrong? Who were the intended targets? Did Israel find them? What more information can you give us?
Well, first, we regret the loss of life of any journalist or non-combatant. You know, we fight Hamas. That's our goal, to eliminate Hamas. We are still looking into the details of that incident, and I'm sure that in the next few days we will have more information about that. But Prime Minister Netanyahu was very clear that he said it was a tragedy. We regret it. You know, during wartime you have such kind of incidents, but our goal is to fight terrorists, not journalists, not anyone who is not involved in terrorism.
Ambassador Xu Dezhi with China Central Television. We heard the atrocity of those hostages. But the thing is, in Gaza now 62,000 people passed away. There are more people in Gaza, maybe share the same atrocity. Is there a better way to solve this problem? Is this Gaza City operation needed, necessary, really?
So I will tell you that we know how this war will end. With the hostages coming back home and Hamas is not in power. The sooner it will happen, there will be less suffering for everybody. So I'm not familiar with any other option. You know, maybe there will be an agreement, but if not, we will have to take a military measure, military pressure, in order to bring back the hostages. We cannot call it a day when the hostages are still in Gaza.
Even committed war crime?
I disagree about this statement. You know, we are fighting a war almost 2 years. We could have finished this war very fast, but because we fight according to international law, we pay a heavy price. We have many casualties. I don't accept this notion of committing a war crime. The war crime was committed on October 7th by Hamas.
Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, speaking with reporters at the United Nations in New York City before today's UN Security Council meeting on the war in Gaza. Danny Danon took part in that meeting, as did the Palestinian ambassador to the UN, Riyad Mansour.
Before the world's eyes and under its watch, Israel has imposed famine on the Gaza Strip. It has done so deliberately, cruelly, as a matter of state policy. The Gaza famine, a famine eating away at infants and children. It was described accurately and vividly by Save the Children. A famine now declared in Gaza City and creeping rapidly all over the Gaza Strip. A famine that could have been prevented if deterrence had matched the level of the crimes committed. Israel was presented with a ceasefire deal that could save the lives of 2 million Palestinians and 20 Israeli hostages. But it has chosen instead to expand its military control, escalate its brutality, and continue killing innocent civilians. Again, it does so deliberately and systematically, obsessed with one objective since day one: displacement and disposition of the Palestinian people, a continuum it has pursued for nearly 80 years. So instead, while the world demands a ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, Israel has indicated clearly that it wants to expand its crimes. Rather than put an end to them, that its choice remains violence, death, and destruction.
Riyad Mansour is the Palestinian ambassador to the United Nations, speaking at today's Security Council meeting in New York City. Dorothy Shea is the U.S. acting ambassador to the UN.
The path to a better future in the Middle East is clear. It starts with freeing Matan and all 50 hostages who remain in captivity nearly 2 years after October 7th, 2023. It means ensuring that Hamas, a barbaric terrorist organization, never controls Gaza again, nor poses a security threat to Israel. The United States continues to work tirelessly to accomplish all those objectives while supporting humanitarian assistance to innocent people in need. We cannot expect peace as long as Hamas is a ruling force in Gaza that is threatening or attacking Israel. It is no coincidence that talks with Hamas fell apart after several countries, including members of this council, announced their intention to effectively reward Hamas for the massacre by recognizing a Palestinian state, all while hostages are still being held in subhuman conditions. Hamas officials have even said that unilateral recognition is one of the fruits of October 7th. The United States continues to focus on the real and important tasks at hand, not conferences, but serious diplomatic efforts, and providing humanitarian assistance in a war zone where a terrorist organization uses aid as the basis for its terrorist machine. Mr. President, we all recognize that hunger is a real issue in Gaza and that there are significant humanitarian needs which must be met. Addressing those needs is a priority for the United States. However, we can only solve problems with credibility and integrity. Unfortunately, the recent report from the IPC doesn't pass the test on either. One of the report's key authors has a lengthy record of bias against Israel, including openly justifying the Houthis' terrorist attacks on Israeli civilian targets. By his own measure, he ought to have recused himself. This helps explain why the normal standards were changed for this declaration, raising significant questions.
Dorothy Shea, U.S. Acting Ambassador to the UN, at today's Security Council meeting at the UN in New York City on the war between Israel and Hamas. Dorothy Shea is representing the U.S. because the U.S. Senate has not yet voted on whether to confirm President Trump's nominee for U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz. Reuters reports that President Donald Trump was presiding over a policy meeting on the Gaza war on Wednesday with input from former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and former Trump Middle East envoy Jared Kushner, a senior White House official said. Trump, top White House officials, Blair, and Kushner were discussing all aspects of the Gaza issue, including escalating food and aid deliveries, the hostage crisis, post-war plans, and more, the official told Reuters. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word and get the stories making headlines in Washington emailed to you every day. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.